Hi, welcome to the Lewiston Tribune podcast. This is episode number 41. I'm Matt Bainey, managing editor of the Lewiston Tribune, and I'm joined today by Sue Gehrke from the Twin Rivers Genealogy Society. Sorry, Sue. And Garry Bush, retired educator and local historian. And we're going to talk about the Walking with Ancestors program that's coming up. That's coming up at the Normal Hill Cemetery in Lewiston on July the 4th, Friday. It's people can come at 8:30 a.m., starting at 8:30 a.m. until 10:30 a.m. And we'll find out more of the details about that. Before we get started with our chat, just a reminder that the Lewiston Tribune podcast is available at lmtribune.com, on our YouTube page, and on all the podcast apps. So wherever you listen to podcasts, please subscribe to us, and we have a new episode every week. So, Sue, let's start the Walking with Ancestors program. Your group has put it on for a while now, more than a decade, right?
Yes, we started in 2011. And the way it came about is they went to Eastern Washington Genealogical Society in Colfax, I believe, and they were doing it. And so we decided we'd take it on. They quit doing it, and we have continued. We started in 2011 and have gone through. There was a time or two when it was either too hot or smoky that we didn't do it, but the last one we did was last year. And we've done some of these areas. We do divisions, like the Masonic division we've done twice. There's Division 1, the K and P division was the very first one they did. They've never done the mausoleum, and so we did that last year, which was kind of interesting. People were able to go in and see the mausoleum and then listen to about the different people that were in there. The plan for Walking with Ancestors is that no matter who you are, you have a story of some sort. And so we try to portray them as, tell about their story, their life history.
Okay, so it's not necessarily even just the biggest people, the most well-known people who lived in the area and are buried there. These are
not at all.
Okay.
It's regular Joe Blows that have just died and we don't know where they came from. One fellow was from California a couple years ago, and he's a woodsman. He was buried by the woodsman. You can probably help me out, Garry. It was an insurance policy that paid for their burial, and so they are buried up there. They were actually from California, but they stayed here and were buried here. So everybody's got a story.
So it's free to attend. You don't need to sign up. You can just show up at the cemetery on the 4th of July, right?
Correct. We do ask if you'd like to bring a chair. It's about a 10-minute per person program. You just take your chairs around to the different people. We try to keep it close to the street as possible, just so it's easier walking for those that are having trouble. And there are facility available as well.
And if you attend, about how long will it take to make the rotation through, you think?
Probably this year about 45 minutes to an hour total.
Okay. Without spoiling too much, Sue, what are maybe some of the highlights that people might look forward to this year?
Well, one of them is Garry is joining us this year, which we're very thankful for. And we also have a veteran. We're doing the veteran section this year. And so we have a veteran, a missing in action veteran, Roderick Mayer, that was from Lewiston. He actually was my husband's neighbor before he went into the service. And a young gal is doing him. She thought he's pretty cute, so she decided to take him on. And then we have a Medal of Honor gentleman, Francis Oliver, that Garry is doing. We have Tilmer Davidson. He was in the Korean War, and There's a story behind him as well that's pretty cool. And then Weldon Butler, not related to any of the Butlers in this location, but he came to Lewiston. And then I myself am doing Patrick McHugh. He was a pharmacist at St. Joseph's Regional Medical Center when it was not St. Joseph's Regional Medical Center. It was just St. Joseph's Hospital. So, and most of the people that are being done were researched by the people that were doing, that are presenting them. Mine is not. Mine was researched by Russ Schaff, and I will present him.
Okay. Well, like you said, interesting. These are folks that even people who have are well familiar with Valley history probably don't know most of these folks, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Always before we have tried to do people that were died before 1940s. Because of the military, we decided to take on, because there were some younger ones here, and then we realized, well, it's been 50 or 60 years since they have died or missing in action, that we decided we'd use them instead. Okay. So we have some old ones, but we have some younger ones as well.
And Garry, you're the guest speaker this year. What sort of topics do you kind of plan on talking about?
Well, I've been going to the Walking with the Ancestors for years. I love going over to Normal Hill Cemetery. So the reason I do love to walk through there is because the variety of headstones and the variety of people, and they were all somebody that migrated to the area basically to start Lewiston. And so there's, Sue talked about the woodsman. Well, if you go over to that section where they're buried, which they were members of organization, a fraternal organization in the United States, you see really unusual headstones. They look like trees, and they were the woodsmen. And that in itself is fascinating story, that they were metal headstones that the woodsmen provided at a lower cost to those people that were part of that organization. And so again, the history of our cemetery and who's buried there. And so we have a lot of veterans buried there. Steve Branting has done a lot of research on the library. And since I've been good friends with him for so long, that's really easy for me to do the research, not like the society that Sue represents, because they dig deep, deep, deep and teach me a lot about how to research individuals for this event and also for other things that I've been looking for. So Steve is always willing to help me, and so is the Genealogy Society when I do talks. So it's the assets that come with this society that presents Walking with the Ancestors is a real benefit to the whole community. And so look forward to working with them. And I really appreciate what they've done for me. And Steve is the same way. If he needs something, they're there to help. And that helps the history, understanding the history of our community.
Yeah. Sue, how do you folks research the people? Because these are, like you say, average folks. So how do you get the info on them?
The library, Lewiston City Library, there's somebody 3 days a week that come in and are there for a couple hours during library hours that are they can go to and walk them through how to go through to find your history. My mother-in-law has done her whole side of the family back to 1100s on her side, and her husband not quite as far back, but she got me interested, and then I started watching Who Do You Think You Are? And so that's what really got me excited. I I personally myself use Ancestry. It's a paid program. There are several others. Most of the people in the society don't use Ancestry. They use Family History, and there's a couple other ones. There's books at the library as well that you can go and look through. Not all of them are upstairs where the people are, but you can make arrangements to go downstairs and look at those as well. There are not as many as used to be at the Carnegie Library, but there are still books there. And online is where you find everything anymore. You don't have to go too far.
What sort of documents are they? Is it census documents? What other kind of things do you
Census
find?
documents, church documents, baptisms, marriage license. The 1950 census came up last year, and so that was pretty exciting because there were people that we could see, family that I could see that I could look at. There's all kinds of things that you can go to. And then if you get online and see other family members that have been doing this in Ancestry anyway, you can contact them and see if they could help you out or share information. Sometimes you have it upstairs in your attic. My mom had 5 bags of photos that she'd never pulled down, and I have them, and I don't know who they are because they don't have any names on them. They come from as far as New York. You know, sometimes people have lots of family history in their own family that they could talk to people. And we strongly encourage them, if you have family that knows the history, to talk to them. And not everything is correct. I will tell you from firsthand knowledge. So.
Garry, you mentioned the cemetery, and it is just thinking of the Normal Hills Cemetery. Like you say, there are a lot of interesting headstones there. Cemeteries in general are kind of interesting. You, as a historian, you probably like going to them. And anything in particular about the Normal Hills Cemetery kind of stand out to you? What makes it unique?
Well, it's part of our city history, certainly. And the first cemetery is located right on the brow of the hill overlooking downtown Lewiston. And you put it there because the city is located on a river bottom. So if you buried Aunt Hattie down on the river bottom, when it flooded, Aunt Hattie was on her way to Portland.
Yes.
So you didn't do that. If you look at most cemeteries throughout the nation, you'll find them on high ground, especially in flooded or above ground, like you find in New Orleans. They're in tombs, concrete tombs above ground because everything's lower than the river level there. So consequently, the first cemetery was located where Pioneer Park is located today. And as the city grew, it was impossible to take care of all that wanted to be buried in the city cemetery. And in those days, you could bury Aunt Hattie in the backyard. But Normal Hill was not established at that time. It was just a cemetery above the bluff overlooking downtown on high ground. And so consequently, willy-nilly burial sites around town became a public health concern. And so they moved that cemetery and took the bodies out and told everybody to dig up Aunt Hattie and take them out to the new site, which was on right outside city limits. And that is Normal Hills Cemetery, which the founding fathers got in a lot of trouble because the city annexed that land, so they thought. But since we weren't a state at that time, we were still a territory, then the city had to go to the state legislature to annex the land. So it became a real logistic and legal issue. So that in itself then gives a lot of historic background to Normal Hill. And many of the people that are in that cemetery, their final resting place was Pioneer Park. And so Pioneer Park, they did the best they could to take out all the graves and move them, and they didn't. They ran out of money. So you have a lot of graves that have the headstones, but there's nothing underneath the ground in Normal Cemetery because they never had a chance to move them. So going back, it's a historic part of our history. And as Sue was saying, there's all kinds of ways to get the information, and I've picked up a lot of ideas on how to do that, and a lot of training from the Genealogy Society. And I just find a grave. You can find a grave if you know the name and you know approximately when somebody died. And then a lot of times that grave site and information, and then you can piggyback on that and expand your knowledge of it. So, I mean, I've done my ancestry like Sue has. I don't go back that far because I don't have the expertise to understand how to do it. But it's really interesting because, like Sue said, as you get older, you want to know where your ancestors, and you had all these stories. And so I went back to 1734 on my maternal grandmother, paternal grandmother, and followed that back. And they were English, and it was all 1734. So I told my daughter she could be a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution because she can trace that heritage back. And my daughter said, "What's that? What?" Yeah, because again, young people aren't interested until they get older. And so now the questions coming from my daughter are, what is the Daughters of the American Revolution, the DAR, and what, I mean, I found the actual ship that my maternal grandfather came across the ocean, and the registry when he came to the United States at Ellis Island.
Wow.
And so, the registry shows him his name, the manifest from the steamboat that he took over from Holland and Antwerp, which was the exit. But things like that, I mean, that stimulates me and certainly Sue at a higher level. But it just gives us we're in a big scope here. We go back centuries. Our ancestry goes back centuries. And as you go back centuries, there's less and less people. So I go on sometimes with stories, but how far that's 6 steps away from somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
That as the population got smaller, your interactions with people became easier because you were all concentrated in certain geographic areas. So as you go back, you find out, oh, my great uncle, my dad's uncle, was a good friend with Babe Ruth. That sort of like, oh, and then people can identify that I have some knowledge about my ancestry, but then that stimulates them, that they were best friends and went fishing and hunting together. So
Yeah.
that was my great uncle, and they go, wow, what a story. No, everybody has stories like that. You just don't know it. The steps get closer, and on my paternal side, I had I don't know how many generations, but he was a guard at the White House during the Civil War. And I found a photograph, a
Jeez.
rare photograph that shows Lincoln in the rotunda, and there's two Union soldier guards. Was that my great
Uh,
uncle or somebody? Because he was a guard at that time. So that makes it real for me, that time period, because that might be my great uncle, or some generational part of me then was there. So that's how I view history. And people go, you get so excited about it. Well, I think others would too if they had the ability as Sue and the Genealogy Society to help them understand their background. And that would connect them to the past and make history more relevant for them.
yeah, yeah. You mentioned, Gary, delicately mentioned, I think, that there probably are still bodies buried at Pioneer Park. And I think over the years, we've kind of had I mean, it's probably best to let people rest in peace, but indeed, there probably are bodies at Pioneer Park, right?
Yes, and Steve Branting did that research and had ground penetrating radar.
Mm-hmm.
And his students did that in the gifted and talented program in the high school. And that was a long-term project for those kids, which enhanced our knowledge of the extent of the original cemetery, but also brought down from the University of Idaho this highly developed large piece of equipment, which went down 10 feet and could give images of what's buried underneath
Mm.
there. And so, yes, they did pick up not one or two, not dozens, but maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of hundreds.
Okay. Was there ever any? And I did we all just come to the idea that let's just let it be? Was there any suggestion that those people be moved to the Normal Hill Cemetery?
No, I don't think so, because you couldn't. I don't think the identification was possible to
Okay.
say where you're moving, because a lot of those people, remember, in the 1870s, 1860s, were buried not in coffins, and there wasn't any preservation of the body or anything that would identify them. And also that section, it was not a pauper's field, but it was just a common burial ground. You had, in one section, you had the Masonics burial site, and they had detailed uh, drawings and where exactly, who exactly. And so when they were exhumed, then they know who they were, because they had meticulous records. And another section, it was the Jewish people that lived here, and they kept really fine records. But Aunt Hattie she was over by the oak tree next to the rock, the big rock that was there. So the oak tree's gone.
Yeah.
Well, she's over here someplace, and she was buried in a blanket.
Like I say, probably
Welcome.
best to let it lie, right?
Yes.
Sue, so with the Genealogy Society, this I'm guessing is this your guys' kind of biggest event of the year? And when you're not doing this, what sort of other things does the society do?
Yes, it is our kind of our highlight of the year. We take the months of July and August off. We are September through June, we have meetings the second Saturday of the month. Most of those meetings are at the library on the second floor. On in May, we try to do a tour, and we were trying to tour the courthouse this year, but being that they're moving, they didn't really want us there. So a couple of them went with the Garfield County Society in Pomeroy and did a tour in Pomeroy. But normally we try to tour. A couple years ago, we went up to the museum in Orfino. They have quite a nice museum up there and their society. And so we toured that, and that was very interesting, logging things. And so each year we try to do a tour of some place. And then the Twin City Genealogy Society actually started in 1967, and it's been going ever since. I think there were probably a few more in that time frame than we have now, but our society is fairly old. I think our average is probably 70 in age.
Gotcha.
So we're looking for young people to come and join us. We do every month have a meeting, but we also have a time when we can learn something. We also have a spring conference in March that we try to do, and this year we did. We went to the Historic Society and got a viewing of that, and then went to the library and finished it up there with just some historical stories. So.
Okay. And it's probably someone who is interested in wanting to research their own family tree. Joining the society, you guys could probably help teach them the ropes of doing that.
Correct. Yes, we have several ladies that are very helpful, and Pat Van Buren does the obituaries from as far back as you can, go, and she's very willing to help if somebody asks for some help or mails in and asks for an obituary. She can find it in a heartbeat. She's really good at that. Betty Malloy is the same. She is the one that started this Walking with Ancestors, and has continued helping us. She's not presenting this year, but she has in the past, and so we're very fortunate too. Yeah, she is presenting. She's presenting Weldon Butler this year.
Okay.
So, sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
But
Great.
she's always been very active.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. It's always interesting to find out the history of the town, and it's I like that this is history of regular folks. It's neat to see how just the regular people lived. Now, another bit of history that these weren't regular people, so to speak. Garry, you've done a couple presentations, and you'll do more on Lillian Bounds, who married Walt Disney here in Lewiston 100 years ago in July. You've done a few presentations on it. Can you kind of maybe sum up a little? Don't give away the whole thing, but tell us a little bit about your presentation about the marriage between Lillian Bounds and Walt Disney.
Well, the title is Lillian Marie Bounds, Local Girl Makes Good. And so she was born at 1899, and she was born in Spalding. And she lived and was educated at Fort Lapway High School. That's what it was called at that time. And came into town and got her education and moved to the big city. For a variety of reasons, which I talk about, and eventually got a job at Disney Brothers, a really small studio in Los Angeles. So I just trace her life. Primarily, the whole presentation is the Disney story through her eyes, what she did, how she helped develop characters, how she was a sounding board, how she had her feet on the ground all the time, and was the practical, not with Walt, he was 30,000 feet up, creative genius, and she was a counterpart. And so developed the theme about Minnie Mouse and what we perceive of Minnie Mouse, and Mickey Mouse, because they were alter egos, sort of. They took on a lot of persona from their creators. And so from the time she was married to Walt here locally, all the way till her demise, and what she did for the community in a number of ways. So it's basically that story of their marriage, but through the lens of Lillian, and she was quite a benefactor. So I did that at Troy Historical Society, and then I did it for the chamber. I gave the presentation for chamber luncheon, and then last night I gave it at the Lewiston Library, and we had almost 100 people show up. So it was really a great turnout, and I appreciated all the people that spent their Thursday evening with me, or with Lillian. Actually, that was the story. And then I am doing it again at noon on July 12th, which is a Saturday, and it coincides with the big children's parade of Disney characters in their costumes on Main Street. And then that ends about 11:30, and then I'll be doing it at 12 o'clock, the presentation at the library. So if people missed it the first time, they can catch it at noon on July 12th.
And that program is part of I think the Lewiston Clarkston Chamber of Commerce is calling it the Century of Love. It's a number of activities planned during that second weekend of July. And anyway, a lot happening there, and it's one of those things that I think people in town, a lot of folks are aware of that Lillian Bounds and Walt Disney got married in Lewiston, but then every time it comes up, there's somebody, usually a younger person, who says, "Really, I didn't know that." So it's kind of neat that they're making a big deal out of it this year to mark the century anniversary of it. Let me ask you one question, Garry. I think I heard, and maybe you can help nail this down. Walt Disney wanted to call his mouse he drew Mortimer Mouse, and Lillian said, "No, that's not a good name. Call him Mickey." Does that sound right? Is that apocryphal?
That's a story, and the Disney mystique repeats it, the different stories, but basically that was something that Lillian said, that she had reacted when he said, "I've got a new concept of a new character, and it's going to be this and it's going to be that," and he was developing that, and she was the one. Lillian was the one that Walt always bounced ideas off of. And so I take that and show historically how many different ideas and what she thought of the ideas, and how she tempered her husband. So they were a very good team. And yeah, it was Mortimer Mouse. His first character was Oswald. And so Oswald, unfortunately, the artist that really developed that character then had his own copyright. And so Walt, when that artist left, he took the copyright with him. And so Walt had to find a new character. And he ran it by Lillian. She goes, "It sounds like a funeral. Mortimer. You got to give him a happy name. Mickey, give him a happy name, Mickey." So that was based upon Walt's personality too. And so I developed that theme, the showing with beautiful historic photographs. And again, when I'm sort of the talking head, but the main focus is what they're going to see. the images that they're going to see. And that intrigues people because it's a constant changing of how you look at things and Walt Disney. And it's very interesting because here I live in Lewiston, Idaho, and I worked at the hospital across from Disney Studios, where Walt Disney worked, ended up dying.
Oh,
Yeah, I was working. I wasn't working at the time he died, which was 1966, but I worked there 62, 63, 64. I worked in that hospital, which was named St. Joseph's Hospital.
okay.
It was right across the street. So I grew up just down the street from where the studios, Disney Studios were.
Okay.
Yeah, so full circle on my story.
No kidding. Yeah. It's who knows? It's interesting. It's fun to think about if Lillian wasn't there to say, no, don't call him Mortimer. Would Disney become what it is now? Would the public have embraced a Mortimer Mouse? Who knows? It's just fun to think about things like that.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to show, because not only that story, but there's other stories along the way that I tried to bring out, because it's Lillian's story, how she viewed things, how she saw things, not Walt, because that's, everybody's got a story about Walt, but what about that rock solid partner he had and how that helped him be successful in life?
Yeah. Well, great. Hey, folks, thanks a lot. So just a reminder, a lot of fun, free, historic things coming up here in town. Walking with Ancestors on Friday, July 4th at the Normal Hill Cemetery. You can show up between 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. To get a nice tour there. Garry will be making presentations about Lillian Bounds and Walt Disney. That is happening on July the 12th, Saturday. And thanks, guys. It was a fun chat today. Can you think anything else that we might want to hear about?
To see you at the cemetery on the 4th of July.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, guys. And thank you for watching this episode of the Lewiston Tribune podcast. We'll be back again next week with another new topic. Until then, have a great day. Thank you.